Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mickelson, your host, speaking at you from Monday, May 4th, 2026, in the space and time continuum. It's that day when all the geeks say, May the 4th be with you, the Star Wars geeks, which I am not one of. I like Star Wars and the whole thing. I was pretty amazed by it when the first movie came out, but I was 13 years old. I was a 13-year-old boy. I was also into Kiss. Go look up lyrics of the first 3 Kiss albums, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, I don't even know why I went there. And please don't be insulted if you're a Star Wars geek. But really, you're not going to get girls that way. Because, you know, are women do women say that? I know girls didn't like Kiss when I was in junior high. I couldn't get girls, you know. Anyway, again, let's get back on track of what we do here. Another incredible week, and the energy levels going up and down. The dull headache-ness of the last week you may have felt if you're only paying attention to mainstream corporate media. Even MS Now, which used to be MSNBC, is starting to turn and starting to point out things in a truthful way. But Dana Bash, for instance, have you ever noticed why does she always have that scared look on her face? She's always like, her eyebrows look like they're always kind of up and her eyes are really wide, you know? Why does she have that look on her face all the time? Is it because she knows that she's being forced to purvey BS live on the air and that people are beginning to hate her for it? I actually used to like her. I thought she was good, but it's such a mess now. The people who no longer work for these entities are doing a much better job and having a much better time and gained their fans back once they left and started something new on YouTube or something like that. You know, like Katie Fang going and becoming on Midas Touch Network. Also, McFarland did the same thing. He left CBS and now he's got a show on the Midas Touch Network. It's their own shows, but they have the support of the network of Midas Touch so that they get more streaming, that more people see them. That's where the real truthful news is. Dana Bash talking to Jamie Raskin, Representative Jamie Raskin. She says to Jamie Raskin, well, do you think that the Democrats saying all these bad things about Donald Trump is what's getting him, you know, constantly assassinated attempts on his life? You know, first of all, this was not an assassination attempt on his life. It came nowhere near him. If you want more on that, listen to last week when we go through a bunch of details about really, you want us to believe that about the assassination attempt, quote unquote, at the Correspondents' Dinner. Dana Bash says, do you think it's the rhetoric of the Democrats? And then Jamie Raskin says, what kind of rhetoric are you referring to? And here's what she said. You would think she would say, you know, how you accuse him of being a child rapist and a pedophile and a war criminal and blah, 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 blah. No, she doesn't say that. She just, with her scared look on her face, she goes, well, you know, saying things like Donald Trump is bad for the country and so on and so forth. That's what she said. Jamie Raskin was all he could do to not just laugh at her face. So if that's what you're watching, of course you got a dull headache. Of course you got a dull headache. Jake Tapper saying That was not a hoax. I was in the room. I was in that correspondence dinner, and that was not a hoax. That was not a staged. That's what he said. That was not staged. Well, how do you know it wasn't staged just because you were told to get down on the ground? That's part of it. It reminds me of this guy I met in Dallas in 1988 when I lived in Dallas for a year. So this is what, 25 years after JFK got his head blown off. And anybody who's got any sense, who knows anything about it, knows that the least believable story about what happened in Dallas that day in Dealey Plaza was that Lee Harvey Oswald shot him. Now, I was deep into all of that back then. Was reading books. I was seeing documentaries. And this guy, he was older than me because I was 2 weeks old when John F. Kennedy was murdered. This guy was, 20, older than me. So I was at a party and somebody said, Todd, you got to talk to this guy because he says Lee Harvey Oswald definitely shot Kennedy. And I said, well, how do you know, to this guy? And he goes, because I was in Dallas. And I said, you were in Dallas when he was shot? Yeah. And then I said something like, were you on the 6th floor of the book depository building with Lee Harvey Oswald? Because, by the way, he wasn't there, but were you right there? And no, but I was in Dallas, and I know that they're telling us the truth. I know the government story is the truth. And I said, because you were in Dallas? Where in Dallas? And he said, well, I was, and I said, what were you doing? And he goes, I was playing tennis. And I said, well, did you hear the shot? Well, no, I was way across the other side of town. Okay, how did you find out? Well, somebody came, after a while, somebody came and said, hey, the radio's saying that the president just got shot and blah, blah, blah. And so he thinks he's an expert on it. I, being 2 weeks old in Minnesota, probably heard the news about the president being shot before this guy did. But he's an expert on it. Just like Jake Tapper's an expert on that definitely wasn't staged. I was there. Okay. Too much time on all of that. Let's get to some things that happened, because when you actually look at what's going on, the dull headache is cured. And you start to realize, wow, the whole Trump regime is crumbling to the ground right in front of us. Nothing is going well. Keg breath. I don't know if you saw last week, he was being grilled, giving testimony in Congress. And he started off by saying the Democrats in Congress are the worst enemy of America. And he wants to ask for $200 billion for the war. He's asking these people, and he starts by insulting them. He's calling them reckless, feckless, and defeatist. And that's why the Americans are not behind the president in this war. Representative Moulton pointed out then that when Kegbreath said, well, we have a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, and Representative Moulton goes, yeah, but they had a blockade. Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz. So, that would be like if President Madison said in 1814, when the British burned down Washington, D.C., that would be like President Madison saying, well, the British just burnt down Washington, D.C., but it's okay because we're going to burn it down too. I thought that was a good point made by Representative Moulton. I wanted to point out some things, too, about missile stockpiles. There's a conspiracy going on that people think J.D. Vance is leaking things to reporters because he keeps getting quoted in these different stories. But then he says, well, with his fake laugh, yeah, they said that, but that's not what I said. And if it was what I said, it's not what I meant. And if it's what I meant, it's not, blah, blah, blah. You know how they do that. But he was quoted as saying that he is worried about the missile stockpiles being depleted because apparently our missile stockpiles are depleted. Now, we should be done with those. The Patriot missiles. Zelensky made fun of them because Iran over some of our allies in the Middle East that we provide with Patriot missiles so that they can knock any missile that Iran's shooting at them out of the sky. That's what the Patriot missile is there to hit missiles before they explode on the ground. So Iran's like, well, let's just light some fireworks over this country, and they'll shoot a bunch of Patriot missiles at these fireworks, and then their Patriot missiles are gone, and then we send them actual ground-to-ground missile or cruise missile or whatever in. But I thought they don't have any, their missiles are completely decimated. No, they keep shooting missiles. They shot missiles this morning. We're going to get into that news here too. But I am rewatching part of West Wing, the TV show, and I just saw the scene where they said, the United States spent, I don't know how much, $1 million studying how to make a pen that wrote in zero gravity. You know what the Russians did? They used pencils. Zelensky uses little drones that cost, I don't know, a few $100s or less to shoot at those things. That's why Zelensky's basically laughing at, we are antiquated in our methods. So it's just all a bunch of crap. It's just, we're fighting a war, spending, also these Patriot missiles cost like $5 million a piece. That gets expensive quickly. We've used them all up. Should we build more? Or should we follow what Zelensky's doing and build something cheaper that works better? What's happening with us going to war in Iran right now? Of course, you know that part of it. But and of course, more just this morning, more evidence that we are absolutely losing and being made a fool of. U.S. Central Command says U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyers are currently operating in the Arabian Gulf after transiting the Strait of Hormuz in support of Project Freedom. American forces are actively assisting efforts to restore transit for commercial shipping. As a first step, 2 U.S.-flagged merchant vessels have successfully transited through the Strait of Hormuz and are safely headed on their journey, except they're not. That's a lie. It never happened. You cannot find 2 ships that have gone, no ships have gone through. As a matter of fact, 2 ships were attacked by Iran, and they are on fire. At least they were a few hours ago. The military leadership, first of all, had to try and walk back what Trump was saying. Trump was saying, a lot of the countries around in all parts of the world are not even part of this war, are telling us to get their ships through there, and we're going to do it. We're going to send the Navy in, and they're going to not touch us because... And then military leadership, CENTCOM, even though CENTCOM now seems to have taken on the lies along with Trump, had to walk that back and say, well, that's not what we're doing. We're not playing Mr. Tough Guy. But we are sending a couple ships there to try and, give some guidance to ships that are already there. Even though Scott Bessent, and I don't know why the Treasury Secretary would be talking about the war so much. He's the Treasury Secretary. But he's saying we're in complete control. No. Iran is showing us the future. Every step we make, they take another step. There's video of missiles being fired from Iran. There's a place in the UAE that's on fire because they sent missiles over there. Some Patriot missiles knocked them out of the sky, but then they sent a drone in, of course, and blew up I think an oil refinery in the UAE. And we're just running scared. We started to send a couple naval vessels toward the strait, and Iran shot warning shots at them. CENTCOM said that Iran shot at us, but they didn't, and they never said they did. So Iran is being more truthful now than CENTCOM. So Iran shot some warning shots at those 2 naval vessels, and those 2 naval vessels stopped. We are not in control. And CENTCOM is now, we can't believe them either. We can believe Iran before we can believe the United States at this point. I'm sorry, but that's where we're at. So that's what exploded today. There's supposedly a ceasefire going on. No, doesn't look like it. Trump saying, we're near a deal. They're begging for a deal. They're begging for a deal. They want a deal so bad. And at this point, I don't even know. They don't know where they are. Bessent said that they're in bunkers. No, they're in charge is where they're at. We see more of the leadership of Iran on camera than we see of the leadership of the United States. Why is Trump again not on camera? Well, let's take a break and come back and talk about some of the other BS that went on just in the last few days. You're listening to A Satellite View. We'll be right back. And we're back on A Satellite View. Find our website, satelliteviewpodcast.com. Go to YouTube and search for Satellite View Podcast. Subscribe, because it's free. And also you can find me at Todd Mickelson on Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and places like that. So Donald Trump, again, he does things on Truth Social, and it's hard to tell if he wrote them or not. Well, he said he went... This is so absurd. It's just so stupid. We've known for decades and decades and decades that for about 100 years now, the White House has a dentist in it, a dentist office. You can get your teeth fixed in the White House. They even have it on Air Force One. And Donald Trump goes back to Mar-a-Lago in Florida this weekend, even though we're in the middle of a war and gas prices have now... They're going up about 5 to 8 cents a day. Yesterday, the average was $4.47, I believe. I haven't seen what it is today. In some places, people are paying more than $7 a gallon. Is that affordable? Trump doesn't care. He went to Mar-a-Lago. He says he's playing golf, but we don't see him playing golf anymore. We see him in his fat man golf outfit, but he's just kind of stumbling around like by the food cart. And boy, Mar-a-Lago looks like a piece of shit. All the footage I've seen of it, it looks like a piece of shit. By the way, there's new footage where Marco Rubio is DJing a wedding. I used to DJ weddings, okay? I needed money. I was good at it. I hated doing it, but I did it for a few years. And you know, wedding receptions are gross, and they're always in gross rooms with gross lighting, and then the DJ sets up some stupid flashy lights. And that's exactly what it looked like in Mar-a-Lago. The ceiling was not even raised in this room. And these idiots are dancing. These drunk guys are dancing, and Marco Rubio is standing behind the DJ table listening in earphones. Like, what the hell? Anyway, so he's at Mar-a-Lago, and immediately, not on the schedule, but they say, oh, he's going to his regular local dentist appointment on Saturday morning. And they throw him in a limousine and take him away. Right. That's what was going on. So he's crumbling, and in photographs and video, he looks incredibly horrible. And you know, when they pump you up with stuff, you can be in way better shape than you are for most of the day. Talked about that a few weeks ago, how people, even with cancer and things like that, you give them their medication. Sometimes it's something strong, like steroids or something like that, and they will feel better for a while. But that doesn't make the cancer go away. It's just for their comfort. And the only time we see Trump is when he's pumped up like that. How many times now has he disappeared, and speculation is that he has gone to the hospital? There's video of people who live near Walter Reed who videotape Air Force, what is it? The helicopter, Marine One, the helicopter that the president flies in. They videotape it flying over their house like weekly. And that wouldn't happen really unless the president was going to the hospital. So who knows what's going on with him? He's completely crumbling. What else is going on? J.D. Vance seems to be absolutely crumbling. He's not allowed to go to the Vatican. Instead, Marco Rubio's going. J.D. Vance is supposedly the highest ranking Catholic in the cabinet or in the regime. And Trump told him, no, you're not going to the Vatican. So DJ Marco is going in your place. What else happened? Just this morning, news came out that Melania is hiring a fixer. Why? Why? I mean, does she really think that we don't know that she got into this country and got illegally credentialed using an Einstein visa that you have to cross high bars to acquire? She says she knows 7 languages. English is obviously not one of them, and I haven't heard her try another one. Not that I would know how well she speaks another one, because I don't know any other languages, but at least I know English. And I'm not saying that she's dumb. I don't know her, but she was a sex worker, and she got brought into the United States and set up by rich oligarchs like that guy with the freaky name who was the boyfriend of the woman who now seems to be coming out with all this information that's scaring the crap out of Melania. So she's hiring a fixer. Does Melania know that we know all that stuff already? So what is it that she thinks we don't know? Does it have to do with Jeffrey Epstein? Because, by the way, we know that you know Jeffrey Epstein. We know that you hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. Did you work for Jeffrey Epstein? Were you a victim? I don't know. I don't know. But she knows, and she's trying to cover it up, as is Trump. Just today, news came out that he is trying to block the Bondi deposition. Now, Pam Bondi was supposed to show up for an actual committee hearing, and she didn't. The Democrats are trying to hold her in contempt. The Republicans are scared to death and just not showing up anywhere. You don't see them on camera anymore. They're trying to stay away from Washington, D.C. James Comer, and that's not my fault. It's not my fault. I'm not. He's the chairman of the Oversight Committee, and he's not doing his job anymore because he's scared of having committee hearings because they're disastrous, especially if Pam Bondi goes in there. So he said, okay, she'll come in for a deposition the same way that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton did, a videotaped deposition where they're under oath and videotaped, and that is then released to us, the United States people. Trump is trying to tell James Comer to not allow that either. So Pam Bondi is saying, I'm just going to come in I'm just going to talk. I'm not going to go under oath, and I don't want to be on camera. And the Democrats are, of course, trying to fight that. But Trump is directly directing that. If he is not guilty of anything, the best thing to do would be to release all the information. Let Pam Bondi speak and tell us what she knows. It sounds like that would exonerate you. But you don't want her to do that. Here's another thing related to that. Leaked emails suggest Ghislaine Maxwell plotting to sacrifice big name for freedom. Now, I don't know if you know Julie K. Brown. Famed reporter Julie K. Brown obtained a leaked email penned by Ghislaine Maxwell while in prison last year. An email, by the way, that was Ghislaine Maxwell in prison, not Julie Brown. This isn't written very well. Julie Brown theorized that might hold a clue to the convicted sex trafficker's plan to secure either a pardon or other reprieve from her 20-year sentence. Republicans on the House Oversight Committee recently signaled an openness to offering Maxwell, who was found guilty of 5 federal charges related to sex trafficking minors, clemency in exchange for testifying under oath. Actually, a pardon they're talking about. In a report published on her Substack recently, Julie K. Brown predicted Maxwell will ultimately receive a pardon or other relief, citing an email she sent her sister last October. Here's Julie K. Brown, quote from Julie K. Brown. I found this note she wrote to her sister from prison back in October that hints at what Maxwell has. Now, Julie K. Brown's reporting helped lead to Epstein's arrest in 2019. In this email, noting that one day the spigot will dry up, okay? The spigot will dry up one day. Does this mean Maxwell knows that when the spigot of evidence Congress has dried up, they will look to her for help? There's more to this, but it looks like Ghislaine Maxwell is threatening to blackmail, right? So Julie K. Brown thinks that Ghislaine Maxwell is saying, hey, I need a pardon here. Pardon me. Do you want me to talk about what I know? Oh, also with the Epstein files, 60 Minutes Australia did a show on the Zorro Ranch in New Mexico that Jeffrey Epstein owned. And that there's a lot of, it seems to be known, but not proven, quote unquote, that a lot of nasty stuff, including murder, torture, of course, rape, and things like that, went on there. Representative Stansbury from New Mexico was on that 60 Minutes show in Australia. And she's talking about things I had not heard her talk about before. Why is that not going on in the United States? Why are we not told these things? Australia is not afraid to report on this. It really seems like a lot of information is ready to break. A lot of people are getting more and more scared. And it really seems like a lot of information is about to break. And this information is all over the world. We don't need Pam Bondi. This information will likely come from someplace other than the United States, because the United States and its regime is doing all it can to cover it up. The pressure is still on. You and I are not forgetting about it. Don't forget about it. The Epstein files. Here's another thing that's really good news. Susan Collins, who you know as a senator from Maine, she's running for re-election. Now she knows who her opponent is. Governor Janet Mills, a Democrat, was running in a primary against a guy named Graham Plattner. Graham Plattner is an oyster farmer and an ex-Marine. When you hear him talk, he makes a lot of sense. He was endorsed by the people I agree with most. Bernie Sanders. I don't want Bernie Sanders to be a candidate anymore. I don't ever want to hear his voice again. And I don't think he's a good deliverer of the message. But I agree with everything, his policy ideas. So anyway, Graham Plattner, a lot of the leadership is scared to death of this guy. And they were trying to pull for Governor Janet Mills. But Graham Plattner seemed to be ahead of her in the primary by between 45 and 50 points. So she dropped out this week. So now Graham Plattner is the candidate running against Susan Collins. And the Democrats are afraid that he can't win because they think he's too extreme, because he wants things like universal health care. You know? I don't know. The Democrats got to stop being afraid of that. The really good news here is the Democratic leadership now is starting to embrace him, because it turns out in new polling, Graham Plattner is at 47.6% to Susan Collins' 40.0%. He's almost 8 points ahead of Susan Collins, who has been in the Senate in Maine, I think, since 1997. She's 72 or 3 years old. Looks like she might have something like Parkinson's. I don't know that. But she has, her symptoms have been showing more and more. She's kind of shaky. I hope she doesn't have Parkinson's. But, you know, She will be 79 years old by the time, if she were to win this election, she will be the same age as Donald Trump and still be a senator. Graham Plattner, I think, I think he's 41, I think I heard. Not sure, but I think he's 41 years old. There is a big change happening for the good in the Democratic Party. And you even see now Hakeem Jeffries starting to understand this and starting to get better at when he's talking into a microphone. Now he's saying about the Supreme Court, everything is on the table when we get into power. We've got to stop this fascist Supreme Court. Everything on the table means things I've talked about, for 5 years now, about it's not packing the Supreme Court, it's updating the Supreme Court. When it was decided to have 9 Supreme Court justices, there were 9 circuit courts. And now there are 13 circuit courts. There should be 13 SCOTUS. Anyway, that's what should happen. It's just we're afraid to break tradition in this country. Well, we're seeing that our tradition is not doing us any good anymore. And we need to tear it. This is what's happening. It's all crumbling down. The Iran war happening is what's making even more maggots and farmers and people like that turn against everything. Donald Trump's polling is incredible. I think it's a 62% disapprove of him overall. Never happened before, that many people being against the president, against the war. Sadly, suicides among farmers is going up. That's not good. That blood is on Donald Trump's hands, and maggots are starting to get to know that more and more. And we need to be unified. On Friday, May 1st, again, millions of people showing up to protest. That's what we need to keep doing. A lot of you are doing that, and I thank you for doing that. And I thank you for being here with me. I'm going to let you go, but if you're still with me, wow, thank you so much. And we got to stick together, keep each other sane. Let's keep the dull headache level to a low. Let's get into some of this news that is, even if the news is bad, it's shaking things loose. And then some of the news is really good. The Republicans are getting really, really scared of, and by the way, the thing about drawing lines in Louisiana and Louisiana calling a state of emergency and calling off primary and saying they want to call off the midterm, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. They're pulling this BS too early, and they're losing way more support than they anticipated. And in Texas, they already know the Republicans in Texas regret redrawing the lines there, the gerrymandering lines, because they say it's diluting the hard right areas. So a lot of the shoe-in Republicans have less of a chance of winning now. And people are turning against them. And by the way, Talrico is running ahead of both of the Republicans that are running in a primary against each other, against him for the Senate seat in Texas. I think they haven't won a Senate seat in Texas since the late 80s, I believe it is. And it looks like they're going to win it. It looks like the Democrats are poised to win even in Texas. They're starting to talk about Mississippi. This is going to be such an incredible blowout. That's why the Republicans are trying to do this BS. And I see a lot of people that I know getting really scared about it. And are the midterms going to happen? If the midterms don't happen in the way they normally do, it's going to be because of something good happening. It's going to be because of we've decided to change things for the better. It's not going to be because the Republicans are still there and Donald Trump is still walking the earth and they're still scared of him. So they're all going to try and do something to thwart the elections to maintain power. They know that they have already lost power. They have a very short period of time to maneuver, and Donald Trump's making it worse for them by doing this war, and now the gas prices. There's no way the gas prices are going to come back down before the elections. There's no way prices of groceries are going to come back down before the elections. If the Strait of Hormuz opened up today and everything went back to normal as though this war never happened, it would take months for everything. Being a small business owner after COVID and seeing how the supply chain problem happened for years after COVID, that hasn't even begun yet. It is coming. Donald Trump has completely decimated this economy. And there's no way. All of his people are saying, oh, everything's going to be fine by the elections. Prices will be back down. No. They are dead in the water, and they know it. They're going to scare you more and more. They're going to try and scare you more and more. They're going to get scared more and more. They're a cornered animal. Don't give them your fear. You do not need to. You do not need to. Don't go and watch Dana Bash and Jake Tapper. They're of no use. They are of no use. They're not allowed to give you any news. Find the 60 Minutes Australia on the Zorro Ranch. You can find it on YouTube. There's real news. Go find Midas Touch Network or any of the shows affiliated. Like I said last week, Katie Fang. Anyway, there's so much more, but I already tried to say goodbye to you about 5 minutes ago, so I'm going to let you go. And again, thank you so much for being here with me. I will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mickelson. Go to toddmickelson.com for links and more information.